Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar on what is LOD and how it impacts project delivery on BIM. And thank you so much for attending our webinar. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Sasikala, associate with the Desapex Engineering as a business associate, and I will be hosting this webinar today. Along with me, Srini is joining the today webinar. He is the engineering director of Desapex. So before going to start the webinar, I would like to brief you about the agenda of this webinar, where I will be introducing you about the Desapex, and Mr. Srinidhi will be explaining on what is BIM and LOD, level of detail versus level of development, different LODs, why complement use cases with LOD, importance of information manager and EAR, unique use cases of BIM, and summary of the session. Let me start with the introduction of Desapex. Desapex is the digital engineering organization working towards digital technology integration in the AEC industry to improve the life cycle of building assets, where we provide complete digital solutions through the life cycle of building and infrastructure, that is design, construction, and operation. And Desapex is creating this sustainable built environment by enabling a digital adoption and integration of technologies for a target value design. And we are headquartered at Silicon Valley of India, that is Bangalore. And also we are operating from major cities. Those are Chennai, Hyderabad, and Hubli. And we are serving all over India. And also we have customers across the globe. So these are some of the customer segments, starting from hotels and restaurants, corporate real estate, residential, education institute, etc. So wherever there is a stakeholders and designers, and 2D drawings can also cause miscommunication between stakeholders, and it is very difficult visualization such as animation, rendering, etc. And running a project without good project management leads to greater expenditure, like where it often leads to unnecessary burden on the budget. So if the facility data is not properly transformed to the client at the time of handover, then the data will be lost with the passage of time, and it will cause difficulties for retrofitting and renovation in future. Lack of standards and regulations might result in the tragedies like structure collapse, fire breakout, etc. And sustainability can be one of the most challenging aspects of this industry, as construction industry contributes 11% of the world greenhouse gas emission. So I would like to brief you about the digital solutions that we are providing to our clients. So these are the three verticals of a Desapex. One is digital design management, digital project management, and digital asset management. Digital asset management. So under the digital design management, like we provide the solution for class reduction coordination, architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing and firefighting modeling, and BIM-based pre-construction services. So we manage the design under the digital framework for the design which are already authorized by the consultant. Under the digital project management, we are providing our clients to manage the construction projects digitally, where we provide digital information delivery plan, technical due diligence, and setting up digital lab. So coming to the digital asset management, here we assist our clients to digitize their project document in terms of latest as-built 2D drawings and 3D BIM models. And also we digitize the existing physical building. So like building after the handover stage or during the operation stage. We are partnered with a Finnish company called Granland to provide the solutions like BIM for facility management, in which we provide maintenance management, asset management, energy management, and also real estate portfolio management services using the BIM model. For that, we have a special software called Granland Manager. And this is a digital twin using reality capture. So digital twin is the virtual replica of the project. Here we built as-built model by using a laser scanning technology. That is nothing but we are going to develop the BIM model using reality capture data, and then the models can be further used for as-built verification and documentation, and also for construction progress monitoring. So these are some of the case studies. We have digitized the warehouse e-commerce company and workspace digitalized for one leading international bank and well-renowned manufacturing facilities of US and Europe-based clients. Not just building, we have served metro, road construction and other infrastructures also. So this is our approach. We have developed a team capable of integrating design and construction parameters into a digital information model, which blends the expertise in domain, process, and tool. So we provide the complete digital transformation to the client. So this is our approach to deliver a quality projects on time. This is our young passionate team. We have a civil engineer, mechanical, architecture, and BIM engineers, which is under the leadership of Mr. Srinidhi and Mr. Varun Kumar. So I feel very proud to say that we are the first company in the world and only company in India to have this kite mark from the British Standard Institute, which is a global standard for BIM. It is ISO 19650 Part 1 and Part 2. So this is all about our Desapex portfolio. Thank you. Now I would like to hand over further session to Mr. Srinidhi. Please continue, sir.
Thank you, Sasigala, for this introduction. And thank you one and all for joining the session today. So I will share my screen today and take you through the different discussions regarding the digitalization of our industry. So before just beginning, so that we can understand what is the type of audience we have, so that I can navigate my discussion better. So we have a small poll. I think team, can we have the poll? I think basically we just want to understand how many project managers, facility managers are here, construction managers, architects, and other people. So please go to your poll screen and give a poll so that it will help our discussion even better. Yeah, fantastic. I think so. We have a lot of good project managers, construction managers, and many people from digitalization background as well. So thank you so much. I think like Sasigala was discussing, so we help our clients digitalization goals and help them achieve their target value designs so that we can have a sustainable built environment. I head the engineering services department here at Desapex, and today I will be talking about a little bit of BIM and the LOD, and what is the level of development versus level of detail, different types of LOD, and why use cases are also important along with using the LODs. Then the importance of having an information manager and an employer's information request. Then few unique case studies of using BIM and having a right LOD on that, and the summary of this current discussion. So first of all, I would like to discuss regarding what is the relevance of discussion today, since we have decided to spend our next 30-40 minutes on this discussion. So it's very important that we understand why are we spending this time. See, at least in my experience of last decade in this industry, the technology adoption has increased exponentially in the building sector. Whether it be 3D modeling, drones, cloud collaboration, laser scanning, automated marking on site, different off-site construction methodologies have taken the center stage, and the digitalization is only going to increase because people have realized the benefits of going fully digital. And we all know that most use cases of what we were talking, this can be enabled by having 3D information rich models, which are also called as building information models. But practically what's happening is in many projects, what we are seeing, is, though there is a good specification on the BIM requirements, LODs, and very capable teams also working on the project, but still the use cases what clients are planning are not being enabled, and ultimately clients are not getting the return on investment or the desired output by using the digitalization. So the main reason are substandard models. So if you ask who is responsible, so we cannot just put the blame on one or the other stakeholders. We need to understand as owners, we are responsible, as stakeholders like architects or service consultants, we are responsible, and also the people who are working on the BIM models or the digitalization front. So all the people are responsible for this. So we as stakeholders of this industry, we should ensure that we have this discussion and understand what is the workflow and why projects are failing, and ensure that the technology comes back to the center stage of the project delivery rather than being the parallel workflow. What we have seen is many projects, we all start very excited by having the bold digitalization plans, but suddenly one or the other parameters go derailed, and due to the project delivery deadlines, so we switch back to the age-old way of delivering by having 2D drawings, or by not working so collaboratively. And then, though there will be many issues, but we will manage and deliver the project. That is what is our comfort position. So, if we can understand the gist of today's discussion and hopefully have these points in head before when we are working on the next project, so I think again the technology can be center-head, and the industry can thrive by using all these technologies. So this is one of the interesting survey what was put up by Mr. James Vanderzen in one of the Autodesk University. It was very interesting, so I thought I will show this to you guys. Where the question is, what do you guys think about BIM hangover? Because everywhere, every project we see or everybody we see, they are talking about BIM, LOD, digital twin, all these kind of things. But many people are still not convinced that BIM is the main framework or how it can enable various processes, because these are the responses which have come from the people who are working on this kind of platforms. Because change management process is very painful. Okay, it is still the same, and what happens is, though the RFP was mentioning that we should have BIM, but what has happened is, because of the project delivery deadlines and schedules and these kind of things, the BIM model has taken a backstage, and unless the client is pushing for it, the project managers are not bothered to go about it. So I think this is the truth what is happening, though whatever we say, in most of the project this is happening. So it is an interesting thought to have that. So before we expand our discussion today, so just to contextualize, I want to make sure that we understand what do we mean by BIM when we are talking about BIM, because many definitions are there about the BIM. So I thought I'll put up a very plain English definition on what is BIM with respect to today's discussion. So basically, BIM is nothing but a methodology of using 3D digital prototypes, which are enriched with information for multiple use cases in building life cycle, whether it is design, construction, operations, demolition, or any other phase of that building. If you are using a 3D digital prototype with a lot of information, and then that process or methodology can be called as BIM, or building information modeling. So this 3D prototype is called as building information model. Naturally, if you see here, when we are talking about information rich models, information plays a very important role. So the information in these 3D models is collectively known as LOD, right? So LOD is basically level of detail or level of development, that is as it is popularly known. So these 3D models, what we are talking today, so they have two kinds of information in them. One is geometric information, or you can also call it as visual information, which represents the object's physical shape, size, color, etc. And there are non-geometric information, which represents more of a attribute data or a technical properties of that particular 3D object, which is collectively known as LOD, or the level of development. The same we can discuss by having an example. If you ask me that there is a chair and we want to define that this chair has to be represented in 3D, then we need to give two kinds of information into that 3D object so that it looks similar to the chair. So one thing is the geometric details, means what is the dimensions of this chair, means how does the visual appearance of the chair is there, what kind of legs does it have, what kind of cushion thickness it is using, all this kind of information, which is more to do with the geometric or the visual information. And another important part of having a 3D information model is having the non-geometric data embedded into this 3D models, which is maybe the manufacturer details of this particular chair, or this chair's carbon, these things, what is this sustainability score, what is the weight of this chair, all this kind of information can be categorized into non-geometric data. So this geometric data and non-geometric data collectively will be called as LOD. Similarly, for the people who are from services background, so whenever there is an LOD which is associated, so we can understand by taking this AHU as an example, air handling unit, which supplies let's say a cold or hot air into your room. Basically, the physical appearance, the shape, size, all these kind of things can be told as geometric information, and the non-geometric information will be, let's say, what is the airflow of this, and what is the noise level does it produce, all these kind of information when embedded into these 3D models collectively, this information will be called as level of detail. But what happens is there is a large emphasis on just the geometric data, where project stakeholders will be discussing whether, okay, so we need to indicate the mesh sizes also on the chair or something like that, which may not be that much important information, but we miss out on the very important non-geometric information, which makes this 3D model into a BIM model. So another thing what we want to discuss and contextualize today is LOD. When we talk about LOD, there is a terminology called as level of development and level of detail. So I think it is not that much important that we use level of development or level of detail, but there is a difference which we need to understand. So level of detail is what has gone into the element as an input, whereas the level of development is the development which has happened for that particular element. So on a very high level, what we can think is LOD is what is defined as the requirement, and LOD level of development is what has come as a reliable output once these details have gone into that 3D object. So let us define now the LODs itself, as many people are there in this industry, so they may be seeing this LOD 100, 200 day to day. But let us define, because industry uses this LOD 100, 200 kind of terminologies, and where LOD 200 is said to represent more information when compared to LOD 100 stage 3D models. When we talk about LOD 100, so this is a very nascent stage. So in this table, what I have tried to show is what is the very high level definition, and we have relied on BIM forum for the definition. And typically, in what project stage these models are utilized. Please note that this, when we talk about LOD 100, there may not be even a 3D model also. There could be just graphical representation on a very high level, which is typically used on a very early conceptual designing. When we talk about LOD 200, yes, there could be some level of 3D models, but not necessarily for all elements. But there will be some kind of placeholders indicating what size and shape might be occupied in that particular area, when the schematic design is completed. Very popular LOD 300, where typically it is utilized at the end of design development phase, where in the 3D model, whatever is being developed, the accurate shape, size, and location of that 3D element has to be represented, and in such a way that we should be able to directly measure the elements from the model itself without referring to the non-geometrical information. Then LOD 350 is basically the LOD 300 model itself, but this model has an additional information of maybe hanging details or supports, this kind of things, which will help in interdisciplinary coordination. So LOD 300 model, which is coordinated with the other disciplines, can be broadly called as LOD 350 stage. This will be basically at the end of the design documentation stage. One of the things what I want to highlight is many times when we talk about the design development stage, though the design development stage would have started, but we will be having LOD 300 model only at the end of design development phase. So because we need to understand that these models are going through a lot of iterations, lot of development. So at any given point of time, if you say that LOD 300 model, it may not be available, and we need to understand that by end of design development phase, what we will be having is LOD 300 kind of model. When it is coordinated between the other services, then we should be able to call that as LOD 350 model. So then LOD 400 model. So we saw some people from construction background over here. So once this LOD 350 model, basically at the end of design development phase, is enriched with the fabrication details or the installation details with specific manufacturer geometries. Because in construction industry, what happens is at the design development phase, we may be looking at 2 to 3 different manufacturers for a particular element. So if we take an example of, let's say, a chair, we may be looking at 2 to 3 alternatives which are okay at the design development phase. But at this stage, the client and the project managers, due to the project budget, timeline, or availability, or the technical superiority itself, they might have go with one of the manufacturers. So that manufacturer specific models have to be put into the 3D model to be named as LOD 400 model. So this is typically happening in the construction documentation phase. So another point what I want to tell is that there is no necessary that we need to go for LOD 400 if there is no use case defined or if there is no one using these models. What I see is always we have this parallel track running where the construction is happening on site using the 2D drawings or whatever is taken up, but still there is a team which is working on the models and keeping it updating without having any use cases. I think we should understand that unless we have a use case, we don't need to develop these 3D models. Then coming to LOD 500. So basically, if you see the recent definitions of a smart BIM forum, so they have said that LOD 500 did not to be utilized as of now, because LOD 500 is just the model which is verified on site. That's it. So what we need to understand is LOD 500 model need not to be more we need not to have more information when compared to LOD 400 model. So LOD 400 model, once it goes through the construction, if there are any changes, then incorporate it back to the 3D model. So then it is called as LOD 500 models popularly. This may or may not have geometric information. Please understand that there is no necessity that it should have non-geometric information, because unless there is a use case which is required to use the non-geometric information which is available in the 3D models, then no need to spend any efforts on the putting the non-geometric information. So it is very important that we, in the beginning phases of the project, we have this kind of discussions with the client and the other stakeholders of the project on how these models will be utilized at various stages and what use cases will be derived out of this 3D model, so that it will help in the development and the usage of these models. One of the thing is, when we talk about the use cases, like I was mentioning, that the information what goes into these 3D models, though you have defined the LOD, but still it is very important that we have the use cases also. We know that the BIM models have a lot of use cases. So here the image represents in asset capital phase what kind of use cases can be enabled, whether it is visualization, coordination, cost modeling, construction sequencing, and different kinds of use cases. And in the asset operation phase or the operational phase, like cost comparison, computerized maintenance management, energy management, and these kind of interesting use cases. So at this point of time, just we want to have another poll so that we just understand what is the familiarity of the audience today, especially with respect to the BIM. Can we have the poll? Yeah. Basically, it is about the familiarity of BIM and its implementation. If you are someone who know how you have implemented and all, so please go there and give us the poll. But if you are not used also, that's fine. I think we can have a discussion and see how it can be implemented on the projects. You can go to your poll screens and give your feedback. Because this is very important, because what we have seen is in many projects, other than using visualization, coordination, and at the max construction documentation, we don't see many use cases being utilized by the clients. And the next part of our discussion will be majorly to address that and see how we can take this BIM implementation to beyond use cases of visualization and coordination. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. So I think the poll results are there. So that's what I was talking. So in this next few slides, what we want to discuss is basically how defining the use case of the 3D model changes the meaning of what information has to go into the models, irrespective of what LOD you have mentioned. If you see here, we are talking about two cases where both the cases there is an LOD 300 model which is specified by the client. But the first use case of this model, or the first instance, we have just 3D visualization and coordination of services as the use case. So what happens in this particular example is that we need to ensure that we model all the elements as specified by the client, accurate to geometric shapes and dimensions and locations. Whereas non-geometric information, there is no specific use case which can use the non-geometric information. So there is no necessity to add any non-geometric information unless specifically asked for. Whereas the second use case here talks about the LOD 300 model requirement, but they also specify that they need to have quantity extraction in this particular project along with clash detection and coordination. If you see, now the understanding becomes totally different, and the model development have to have the different layer breakdown structure within the model elements in such a way that these quantities can be derived from the models. If you see here, though both the cases here talk about the LOD 300, but the development of this is very different because the use cases which is being asked here. Quantity extraction, if it is required, then the layering of the 3D model or the families that we use or the 3D objects that we are using in this project has to be very specific so that we can get the desired quantities in desired format. Whereas if it is just the visualization, clash detection and coordination, then there is no such requirement. So it is very important that we as project managers or the owners of the project, we understand this, or even as the service providers or the consultants on the project, that we put a larger emphasis on defining the use cases in a very plain English, so that we clearly communicate what kind of information will be going into the project, so that we avoid later stage debate on what information should have been there or what information should not have been there. Another use case, talking about the importance of use case, here if you see LOD 500 model. So like I said, LOD 500 model is nothing but the LOD 400 model which is verified from site. Perfect. Whereas there is no necessity that we need to add non-geometric information into that if there is no plan from the client or the owner of the project to use it in the later stages of the project. So suppose if the client says that he wants the LOD 500 model and he will be using it for, let's say, a digital twin for enabling some applications or for maintenance management or facility management kind of applications, then talk to them and understand what softwares or what technology they will be using, and then only add such information which will be necessary to to enable the use cases which are planned by the client. So just because somebody says LOD 500, there is no necessity that we need to add any in additional information, because there could be some elements which may not change at all from the LOD 300 stage itself. So this has to be understood and communicated well within the project stakeholder group. Another thing what we want to discuss here is that we need to understand here that one tool or stakeholder cannot do everything. Many times what we have seen is, suppose we are having an architecture firm who is working on the BIM. So we think that whatever use cases the team had presented of BIM, all will be enabled by that particular stakeholder itself. Or it could be the same case from a BIM consulting team as well. Suppose they would have presented 10 use cases on why to use BIM, then it does not mean that all 10 use cases will be enabled just by they developing that 3D model. So there is a requirement of all the stakeholders which are working on the project to engage at different stages based on their scopes and responsibilities, and engage with this 3D model so that some of the use cases defined can be enabled. So like I tell you, in one of the meeting that we were having recently, so we told that for the cost management, so we will be using a specialized software like Costex or Bexel kind of softwares. But the client was saying, why don't we use just Revit or this kind of software, which we have been using in a lot of other projects? Why we need to use a specialized software? See, what happens is, when we are building the 3D models, we need not to overburden the model size. Not necessary that all information need to be developed within the model ecosystem. So the specialized softwares like for the cost management, what we were discussing, can enable even the non-modeled geometries to be quantified by using some formulas or having some derived quantities kind of things. So it is very important that we understand that just Revit or ArchiCAD cannot enable all the use cases. So we need to understand that there will be different models that has to be utilized. Then there will be different softwares which will be utilized. If you want, let's say, construction sequencing to be done, You cannot tell that I will again use the Revit to do that, or you want even digital twin also. Some people are saying that they will use the same Revit or ArchiCAD 3D models which are developed in the design and development phase as the ultimate digital twin platform itself. So I think there is a maturity required within the ecosystem that it is not like that. So there are different tools and technologies which have to be utilized to enable different use cases, whereas the information to all these different use cases should be enabled by the authoring tool or the model which is developed by using Revit, ArchiCAD, Tekla, or any 3D model authoring tool here. And another thing is that suppose if we take the example of cost management here, so if there is a cost consulting team which is on board, then we should be clear that cost consulting will not be done by the 3D modeling team. 3D modeling team will just do the 3D modeling with all the information necessary for cost consulting, whereas the cost consulting team will then take these 3D models by the help of some specialized softwares, and then they will enable their part of the use cases. So at this point of time, I think most of us, especially who are project managers, construction managers, and people and the owners and people who are consulting the clients, might be under confusion. Okay, there are so many elements to get it right. So how do we ensure that we have a good working protocol on the project so that we can say that, okay, technology really helped us on this project? If you ask me, we tell that always have a very good information manager. If you see, most of the projects today, they have architects, they have MEP engineers, they have project managers, they have construction managers, document controllers, all these kind of roles. But very few projects what we see has somebody who is called as information manager. And information manager, let me tell you guys, is not a BIM modeler or kind of thing. So information manager basically should ensure that the client interest on the projects are maintained, irrespective of how many ever stakeholders are there. Because you as a client, you need not to be an expert in BIM. So you can have an information manager who can develop the requirement document for you, because it all starts from the requirement document. So telling to the stakeholders on what is the requirement from the client or this project, especially from the digitalization point of view. So the information manager, what he will do is he will do a lot of workshops with the clients, and he will put a lot of plain language questions, general questions, understand the project goals, understand the organization level goals also, because there will be a larger organization goals which have to be implemented and ensure that they are also met whenever the project goals are derived. So this information manager will then develop something called as EIR, or employees information request. So this document will serve as a requirement document for all the stakeholders who will be developing and engaging with these 3D models. Then in this information requirement document, so information manager would have also planned who will be developing the model, who will be using the model, how the model development will happen, how the model engagement will happen, and when the different activities will happen. So all these kind of nitty-gritties also will be taken care by the information manager in this documentation, or it has to be taken care by this information manager in the requirement document. And he will also ensure that the execution plans are reviewed and approved so that it is in line or in sync with the EIR which is given by the information manager. Because what happens is, in a decent size of project, we may be having anywhere from 10 to 100 stakeholders, or even more than 100. And we may not know how many models are coming and how many people are just accessing these models without developing these models also. So it is very important that we get an execution plan from each of these stakeholders, and then review these execution plans and ensure that these are in line with the planned activities and planned use cases. So this is very important, and this is also one of the reasons why we should have an information manager. If you see here today, if you ask who is doing all this, especially from the client side or the project management team side, I think this itself, we will see that is a big void on why the projects are not being successful. Then also, once the models are being developed, it is very important that the information in these models as per the set milestones have to be audited and checked for the data which is there embedded into these models, and then also send it to necessary stakeholders for approvals and these things. That is why if you want to have a grand success of implementing digital tools, technologies on your project, so it is very important that you have a dedicated information manager, which is missing in most of the projects, so that we are having a look today. But I think the things will change by you having a very sound information manager, so we can move from a typical visualization and coordination kind of use cases to advanced use cases. So here now I want to talk about one of the advanced use cases, like sustainability. So we all know that today most of the corporate and the large organization, they have a sustainability vision where they have already committed that they are going to be either carbon neutral or carbon negative by 2030 or 2040 based on their priorities and their way of working. And we all know that we, as the leaders in the corporate real estate or the real estate or the people who are maintaining and managing the facilities, we are under tremendous pressure to cut down our carbon emissions, reduce our power consumptions, and align our patterns and behaviors with the larger sustainability goals. But during the design development phase, why not use these 3D models for the sustainability analysis? If you see, even sustainability can be a key use case which can be defined in the employer's information request, and a clear sustainability information exchange protocol on how and what information needs to come, whether it could be carbon emission, or it could be the life cycle cost of that particular element, and what is the replacement cost versus repair cost, and these kind of things which will eventually add up to give a larger carbon foot image of that particular design can be utilized using this 3D models. Because what can happen is, if people tell that okay, sustainability is a key part of this project and we are going to use the 3D model itself as the base information to take our decisions on the design, then what can happen is the architects, engineers, and all the stakeholders who are involved in the project can embed all the information related to the carbon emission and these kind of materials which are being utilized in the project, and then the client can take the decision using some smart carbon calculators. So design 1, okay, it is this much carbon emission. Design 2 is having this much carbon emission. So okay, since design 2 is having a lesser carbon emission and it aligns with our larger organizational goal, so let us go with the design 2 rather than design 1. So these kind of benchmarking and this kind of decision making also can be enabled by having a sustainability embedded into your use case of using the digitalization. Please note that again, we should not rely on one tool itself. So there are specialized tools which can do all this, and your information manager should be able to help you guys in telling what tools should be utilized and who will enable this information. And also, so today, if you see, we are using VR. I think a few projects are using VR for the visualization, but why not use it for fire safety simulation? So today, if you see, most corporates, I think no one wants to have any emergency situation where we lose somebody or there is harm caused to someone because of a bad design. So from fire evacuation point of view or training point of view on how people should evacuate during the fire, why use age-old techniques of just conducting the mock drills or just by using the 2D plans and marking what is the nearest path and so on and so forth. So what we can do is we can use this 3D models during the design development phase itself, and then a safety inspector or the project managers can ensure that there is a enough safety with respect to the fire evacuation, and these kind of simulations can be documented as the proof that okay, so we have taken care of all these kind of things, and these models can be later stage utilized for the building occupiers also, so that there is a adequate or the enhanced fire safety use cases and being enabled by having these 3D models. Another thing very interesting and dear topic to me is universal accessibility, because many times we go to today's buildings and we have people who are differently abled, or even take people who are old and cannot don't have the same physical strength as some of the youngsters. Today they cannot interact with the different buildings the same way a lot of others do. So it is very important that we all keep in mind that our buildings should have universal accessibility, and most corporates today take this very seriously, and most public uh, facilities like whether it is airport or metro, they have a larger emphasis that we accommodate everybody. So, but during the design, none of us are, at least in the projects which we are involved and what ecosystem we are living in, are not using the 3D models to benchmark the model and see how a blind person would interact with this space or with this particular design. Will he able to navigate through the signages which are kept? Can we add some additional type of signages or some alarms or sound-based systems so that we can notify them? Yes, all such things can be simulated using the 3D models itself. Not just that, so even how other type of other people, it may be like physically enabled people or such people also, how they will navigate using a particular design can be seen, and a design which accommodates all the people can be then finalized as the design for the development, and finally have a building which is universally accessible. So if you see, all these are use cases which are already part of the building design. It's not like okay, these are not the points of consideration. Today's discussion is that 3D models or the digital models that we are developing are not being at the center stage of all these discussions. So if we can have a strong specification of LODs and properly defined use cases and have a very good information manager on the project, so that we can move beyond the visualization and coordination use cases, so that we can address the larger use cases like this, which will make our lives much better, and we as the stakeholders of the project will be proud forever for enabling this kind of use cases. So I think it's already, I think I have taken my time. So even if you have slept all through the discussion, I have put in the key takeaways for today's discussion, that you should always have a very good information manager, you as a client, or you as a BIM consulting team, or you being an architect, or you being an MEP consulting firm. Please ensure that you have your own information manager who can understand the requirement if you are a service provider, or if you are a owner who can understand the organization requirements and develop this information requirement. Understand that we did not to go with the herd mindset that just by having a bigger LOD that we will have more information. Please, we need to understand that there is a project that we are enabling. There is a timeline and budget to the project. So we should ensure that only the information which is necessary need to be specified. Then we also need to articulate what is the use case of having so and so LOD for so and so BIM models, so that it is giving a complete picture to the project stakeholders, and also document how these use cases will be utilized in the during the project workflows. Because many projects, what happens is they will be talking about BIM, they will be procuring the BIM services, but if you see the project planning document or their project schedule, there will be nowhere how BIM models are fitting into that, or where the coordination meetings are planned. All such information will be little hazy. So definitely we should rely on standard, because many projects we will have many stakeholders, not necessarily speaking the same language, not necessarily in the same time zones. So it is very important that we use global standards, but not necessarily blindly. We need to understand is these global standards are very broad, and it will be most of the times left to interpretation on what is the meaning of them. So you need an information manager who does not implement these things blindly, or just does not copy paste them, but contextualizes these requirements with respect to the project, with respect to the organization, with respect to the budget and cost, and then ensures that global standards are also there. Then, like I said, I think we have emphasized enough on having a great information manager, and also understand that different elements can have different LODs in the same project. We need not to have same LOD for everything. We can have different LODs for different elements. For us, let's say a use case where the BIM is being utilized just for the ceiling coordination, then we can say that anything which is coming on the floor level, which is not so important for this particular project, can be either not modeled, or can be modeled at a very low detail, whereas the elements which are coming on this ceiling level can be properly coordinated. Or we can also tell that, okay, if there is a hotel project and there is a service corridor, then these service corridors only can be modeled at very high information LODs, and the other areas can be taken up little lightly, so that we have only the information necessary, so that everybody is clear, and the time required for the development of this information also matches with the project larger goals. So thank you so much for attending. So I think I rest my discussion here. If you guys have any questions, please ask them now. I will try to answer to my best. Even if we cannot answer few questions because of the time constraint, please push those questions through LinkedIn or emails to us, so that we can get back to you on that. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Yeah. I think there is a question here. So this is regarding, yeah. So there is a very good question here. So about even if we are using, let's say, ISO 19650 process, do we still need to specify LOD? So there is absolutely no need. Like I said, we as professionals, we need to, or the information manager needs to clearly understand what is the requirement of the project, and then specify what information has to be added into this particular project in terms of EIR document, so that we need not to specify just LOD. Because today when we talk about LODs, some people are talking about LOD 600, 700. They can do any, they can talk about any LODs, because it is a very open-ended question. So having a clearly defined what information is required at what stage, with what use case, should be able to suffice, and we can use the ISO 19650 protocol, because there it's not very specific about the what details should go into your models or something like that. Yeah. So I think Yeah. So yes, I think there is a question from one person here that can Desapex help us in sustainability use case? Does it have any certified sustainability professionals? Yes, we do have a lot of sustainability certified people who can help you to get those kind of achieve the sustainability goals on your projects. Yes, definitely yes. So we are planning to have series of webinars on this kind of topics to make the workflow much better. Please follow us on LinkedIn so that you get the information on when we are having the next webinars and what information. And any questions if not answered, or if the discussion during the webinar was not clear, please feel free to connect on any LinkedIn or Twitter or any kind of social media platform so that we can answer and discuss there as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Srinidhi, for sharing a very informative and valuable session. And I would like to thank each one of you for joining us. And we will connect again soon and bring more and more interesting topics on our industry. So stay tuned with Desapex and LinkedIn and all other social media platforms. Suppose if you have any additional questions, you can contact us by email or any telephone. So we are happy to provide additional supports also. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.